What's going on, everyone? This is Coach Craig, and it's Thursday night football. Taking a look at the single game showdown slate between the Washington Commanders, I should say. Now they did change their name, and the Chicago Bears. It's going to be a pretty interesting one tonight. But overall, what we're going to do in this stream, go through some of the inactives, kind of talk about them, go over the pricing for the players, kind of my thoughts on them in general, and then build a couple of lineups together. Welcome in everybody that is here already. If you guys have any questions at all, feel free to leave them in the comments and I'll answer them as quickly as possible. I know that Dan was in here a little bit ago. He said, let's go. We see JC Money in here saying, yo. So welcome in, everyone. This is, pretty much what I try to do with this is about 45 minutes before lock or 45 minutes before game time, however you want to call it. And go over just all this stuff, 20, 30 minutes, real quick, real simple, help feed you guys a little bit of information overall. So we're going to talk inactives right off the bat. So for the Bears, N'Keal Harry is kind of the big one here that is inactive. He was coming off the IR. He was designated to return. They activate him to the active roster, but he's still not playing tonight. So we're still looking at the same Bears wide receivers that we saw like a week ago. So, we got we got Mooney there and then St. Brown. Those are going to be the two main ones. Pettis is going to play in 3 wide receiver sets. And we did see a little bit more of Amir Smith-Marset last week. So maybe that's a trend that continues. And he's a cheaper price player too as well. But I still probably try to get up to Dante Pettis or Cam Sims if I can tonight. But that'll be a different discussion as we move along there. Lamar Jackson, just a reserve cornerback when isn't going to play too much. Kingsley Jonathan, just a reserve rotational defensive lineman. And Jake Tongas was just kind of their reserve H-back, play a little bit of fullback, a little bit of tight end, but not anything that's major there. On the Washington Commanders side is more where we're going to talk about Percy Butler is just a reserve safety. The right tackle, Samuel Cosme, is out once again this week, so maybe the Bears can generate some pressure, although they haven't been too good at that so far this season. Jahan Dotson's still out again this week, so obviously last week we saw Diami Brown step up in a big way, but he's dealing with a little bit of a groin injury of his own. And obviously his price tag is a little bit elevated since he did score 2 touchdowns last week. So there is some upside there with him, but there is also a little bit of risk just because of that injury that he's been dealing with. Sam Howell's inactive once again. William Jackson, who was ironically benched last week, and they're kind of, I can't talk right now, but they're talking about maybe trading him too as well. So we'll see how that all shakes out, but he's not playing tonight. So we're going to see Kendall Fuller, who's been pretty decent this year on the outside, and then Benjamin St-Juste, who is primarily playing in the slot so far this season. He's moves back out to the outside, and then we're probably going to see Rashad Wildgoose, I assume, play the slot tonight. So maybe that's an advantage for the Bears wide receiver in the slot. Maybe I can't say too much about St-Juste because he's actually played pretty well this year, but Mooney's played a lot in the slot and 3 wide receiver sets, so that might be a matchup that favors him overall. Logan Thomas is out once again this week. He was dealing with a calf injury that popped up late last week, missed last week, probably some type of calf strain. I would expect him to be back next week, but typically a 2-week type of injury. We're going to see a lot of John Bates, and Cole Turner played last week. He played like 50% of snaps. That was his first game that he was healthy for, but he's a pretty good receiving threat, even though he didn't really do much last week. And then Jonathan Williams, just another reserve running back that is more of a special teamer than anything overall. Excuse me. So I'm going to get rid of the inactives. We're going to go over to DraftKings and bring that up real quick. And we'll hold on. So we're going to bring up DraftKings real quick, talk through the pricing. Supposedly the weather is not that great. I've seen various reports. Somebody in one of our group chats said it was like 22-mile-hour winds with 38-mile-hour wind gust. If that's the case, then defenses and running backs are going to look pretty good. When I was looking just at generic Chicago weather, it was like 9-mile-hour winds. So that's not as concerning. Maybe you're a little bit off of the kickers more than you would be otherwise tonight. But I think there's a lot of different builds that you can go about when you're building overall tonight. So just bringing up DraftKings here real quick. I like to go over to the flex pricing, as you probably know if you've joined my stream at any time before, because you play 5 guys in the flex and you only play 1 guy in the captain. So talking about captain pricing when you only play one of them, it's a little bit different, but and it's not that hard to calculate, 1.5 times salary in that champion spot overall, or captain spot, excuse me. So we got Carson Wentz here. He's dealing with a little bit of a bicep injury, supposedly. It's a tendon right next to his bicep, between his bicep and his shoulder. So we'll see if that affects him tonight. If the wind affects him as well, then maybe he's not a guy we want to get to quite as much tonight. In terms of run the Sims, when I was looking at them, the captain percentage for him is about 12% projected. So not a bad percentage there. There's a little bit of leverage to be gained, or it was right about even with the field with the simulation that I did run earlier today. David Montgomery's at $10,400. He should get the volume. He got the volume last week when he came back. Wasn't too effective on the ground, but was very effective in the receiving game. So that's something to watch tonight. Could be an advantage in the receiving game once again tonight. But we'll see how this game plays out overall. It's a little bit tricky over a slate. We got Justin Fields coming in at $10,000. He's actually pretty pricey when you consider that the most passing attempts he's thrown all season is 22. And if the weather is going to play a factor in this game, he's probably not going to throw that much as well. So you really hope he gets those 8 rushing attempts once again. And that's kind of what's going to buoy him up. So I think you should have some exposure to Fields, but I wouldn't go like super, super heavy on him, especially in the captain spot, because he's like 18% projected there. Montgomery is 19% projected. So those are the 2 most popular ones overall tonight. Getting down to Terry McLaurin, been a very disappointing season for him so far. Big news for the Bears is Jalen Johnson's back for this game. Had been dealing with a quad injury, I believe missed 3 weeks in total. We'll see if he's full go. If he is, he has shadowed at times in the past. Not as much this year, but I wouldn't be surprised if he follows McLaurin around just a little bit tonight. That would not surprise me by any means. Antonio Gibson is up after him next, and he's $8,600. If you're playing in GPPs and you want to get really different and you think Antonio Gibson breaks off a long run tonight, that's pretty much what you're banking on there at $8,600. He's not going to be super popular. He is 1% in the captain percent, or 1% in the captain spot. Where was that? And McLaurin was just over 7%. So I don't mind McLaurin in the captain spot tonight. Just keep in mind that Jalen Johnson could see him a lot in coverage tonight as well. Then we get down to Curtis Samuel. He's at $8,200. One of my favorite captain plays on tonight. He's at 9% versus McLaurin 7% though. So a little bit of leverage to be gained on both of them. Actually, I actually have Curtis Samuel. When I ran my projections and everything, it gave me about 6% leverage on him. So I was coming up with about 15% of him in the champion spot. And McLaurin was getting about a 3% in terms of optimal leverage on tonight's slate overall. But that's just kind of plugging numbers in, what you kind of expect to happen and kind of everything else like that. But you never know what's actually going to happen in the game. So So that's an important thing when we talk about single game slates, is you're building your lineup, you're building a narrative. So I believe I have somewhere between 6 and 8 lineups already built. So I have ones that are built based around different narratives. Hey, this defense is going to be the best. I'm going to play the running back with them. Maybe I'm playing both defenses together. Maybe I'm playing both kickers together, since that worked out pretty well last week. And this game's not too much different than last week, if we're being honest, but should be a little bit more exciting game. I know some people have been like, oh my God, it's going to be worse than last week. But at the same time, you have players that can make plays and players that can make boneheaded plays too. So at least be a little bit more interesting to watch. Then we get down to Darnell Mooney. He's about 7% projected in the champion spot as well, $7,600. A little bit overpriced for him just based on what the production that he's had so far this year. But Justin Fields has only thrown the ball 88 times, and 21 of those throws have been targets to Darnell Mooney. So still getting about a 25% target share. Nothing to sneeze at there, but can always break a long play too if he does that tonight. Can look pretty good. Brian Robinson's at $6,600. He's coming in about 5%. He's 5% in the champion spot. He does have some upside. It just depends on how many touches overall. Let's see. So we got Chris in here, and he's like, who we building with, and start building. So I'm just going over a couple notes here real quick of just the prices and everything. And then we'll get into building some stuff though. JD McKissick's $6,400. He's probably better if they're in a negative game script, but he did play the most out of all the running backs last week. So especially if the weather becomes a factor in this game, maybe some of the short targets could benefit him. Khalil Herbert, I'm pretty much just off of tonight since David Montgomery came back and pretty much dominated everything. Then you get down to Cole Kmet, $5,200. Looked a little bit better in more recent games. He's about 2% projected in the champion spot overall. Diami Brown had the big week last week. He's at $5,000. Still dealing with like a little bit of a groin injury, so we're not sure how effective he'll be overall. Equanimous St. Brown, he's going to start. He's going to play a lot of snaps. If he scores a touchdown, he'll be worth it at $4,800. If he doesn't, probably not going to be too happy with it. Both kickers are definitely in play. Both kickers are actually projected about 2% ownership in that champion spot overall. Then we got the Bears defense and the Commanders defense. And the Bears one's a little bit more pricey. Commanders probably be my preferred play, but both are definitely in play tonight, especially if weather does become a factor. Commanders and Bears both projected about 6% in the champion spot for both defenses tonight. Then we get down to John Bates at $3,000. He looks pretty good without Logan Thomas. I definitely mix and match him in a couple builds there. Vilas Jones Jr., he scored the touchdown last week. Do a little bit of return duties, but $2,600, probably a little bit too pricey for him. He was the wide receiver I left out for the Bears when I was talking a little bit ago. And Dante Pettis, this is one of kind of the value spots at $1,800. You see 2.4 points per game. You're just like, well, that's not much, but he's been playing, 50% of snaps or more pretty much every game. He's a guy that's out there running some routes. If he gets loose on a big play, could be in play once again. Cam Sims is another guy too at $1,400. Not a big point total here, obviously, on the season, but him and Diami Brown splitting snaps in place of Jahan Dotson tonight once again. Ryan Griffin wouldn't worry about it. $1,000. Amir Smith-Marset ran a decent amount of routes last week at $600, but more of a dart throw than anything. And then we scroll down. Dax Milne, he'll play a couple snaps tonight, but $200 probably don't want him there. So the last guy that we'd really be looking at would be Cole Turner. He played about 50% of snaps last week. Obviously didn't record a catch or anything else like that, but he was a pretty good receiving threat at Nevada. 5th round pick, was his first game out last time. So that's kind of just a little breakdown on everybody that's actually playing in this game that's probably viable. So when we go through and we build a lineup, we can build a lineup in a couple different ways. We could build whether we're saying like weather's going to be a factor. So maybe in that case, if we're saying that weather's going to be a factor, maybe we'll play both defenses. So I am just going to put the Washington DST, the Commanders, excuse me. So we're going to put them in the champion spot there. If we're playing both defenses, we'd have the Bears as well. And in that case, you probably want to play both running backs. So you're going to want to, we're saying this is a weather game. It's going to be a defensive slugfest. We want guys that we know are going to get touches in this game. We got David Montgomery here. And now the question is, which Washington running back do you want to play? And maybe if it's a weather game and it's kind of just bad all around, maybe you can play Brian Robinson and JD McKissick together. You could put Antonio Gibson in there as well, but you're just kind of hoping he breaks off a long run, which I don't like betting on that at this point in time. We got Brian Robinson kind of maybe that goal line early down back, taking some more advantages there. Or you play JD McKissick, and even if the weather is a factor and they're just throwing a bunch of dump off passes, might factor him overall. Just be something in his favor. So if it's a weather game, they're throwing a bunch of short dump off passes and stuff. Curtis Samuel is probably going to look pretty good because his average depth target is pretty low. If we're playing both defenses, maybe we fade both quarterbacks. You could still play Justin Fields there with some of that rushing upside as well. That's one way to go about it, especially if it's that weather game like we're already talking about. Because we got some guys that are going to work in either on the ground or in the short, quick passing game. So that's one way you could go about it if you want to build something like that. If you, there's a couple different builds that I did do earlier. I should probably just kept the defenses there, because if you wanted to play the defenses and you don't think that whether it's going to be a super big factor or whatever, then we could play both defenses. We could try playing both kickers like we did last week, or like ended up being the winning build last week. I think I had one build that played both as well. So if you do that, then you could still kind of just, it's the same type of theme as we were going on before, except we're switching out a couple different positions for kickers. So maybe you still want to play both running backs here with Brian Robinson, David Montgomery, JD McKissick, something like that. Now, if we want to go and we're going to say that the quarterbacks are going to be effective in this game, not sure that's going to be the case, but if it is the case, we'll just use Carson Wentz to start. So if Carson Wentz is effective in this game, probably at least 2 of his pass catchers are also going to be effective in this game. So Curtis Samuel has been his favorite target so far this season. Terry McLaurin also could be very much in play. You could play him. Let's just say the Bears get out in front in this game. Then maybe we play JD McKissick too. And then you get to the point. Do you want to play Terry McLaurin? Do you want to play like a John Bates? Or do you want to just say the Bears got out in front in this game and we got Carson Wentz, we got Curtis Samuel, JD McKissick, and they're trying to play catch off and dump off passes and stuff like that? Well, maybe in that case, maybe we want to play, like Justin Fields and Darnell Mooney, and we got $1,900 left over. So then we get to the point, do we want to play like a Dante Pettis? Do we want to play like a Cam Sims or someone like that? that's one way that we could go about it. It just kind of depends on how you want to attack that part overall. And then if we do the opposite with Justin Fields at quarterback, I'm going to stack him with some of his options. Excuse me. Got to go back to champion spot real quick. So we put Justin Fields in the champion spot, which he's expected to be pretty popular tonight, even though he hasn't done that much this season. So if that's the case, then maybe we're putting Mooney in there. Probably want to put one of his other weapons in there too as well. So if you want to put David Montgomery in there, saying they're getting out ahead and they're going to run the ball kind of late, and maybe he scores a touchdown, Justin Fields. And the thing with Justin Fields too is with how athletic he is and his ability to run the ball, you don't necessarily have to bring two pass catchers with him, but still in the single game slate, it's not the worst idea in the world. So maybe we bring a Cole Kmet. Let's just put Cole Kmet in this one. And then let's just say we're going to put the Bears kicker alongside them. Then what we can do is we could play Carson Wentz there, and then maybe we want to go that McKissick path. So we're saying the Bears are getting ahead early here. Justin Fields is running around. He's throwing the ball to Darnell Mooney. He's throwing the ball to Cole Kmet. And then obviously the kicker's kicking some points because they're either scoring touchdowns or they're kicking field goals because they got close enough. Carson Wentz is trying to come back. He's kind of peppering J.D. McKissick out of the backfield. Or if you want to play like Diami Brown in this lineup, you could definitely do that as well. Obviously, there's plenty of money there. And then opens up one of those other strategies that I've talked about several times on my streams where you're leaving money on the table. And that's a different route to make your build a little bit different overall. And for what it's worth, it's pretty easy to leave money on the table on this slate again. We don't always get that. Like Monday nights was a little bit different where we had some of the higher priced good options. With Patrick Mahomes, we had Derek Carr, we had, Devontae Adams and Travis Kelce. So there was a lot of filler there. And I know, I'm trying to remember who it is, but I know one of the guys that typically tunes in, he likes to see what happens if we just put like a lower price player in the champion spot to start with. So let's go down here and we're going to just try to figure out who my lower price guy is that I would probably like the best in that case. So maybe we make it Dante Pettis. That one could work. Or if you really want to do like a Cole Turner one too, but I don't think you have to go that far down just because there's not that much to pay for on this slate. So maybe we're putting Dante Pettis in the champion spot. We're going to bring Justin Fields along with the ride for him. Then we got Carson Wentz. Maybe we want to play David Montgomery. Maybe we want to play Terry McLaurin. And then we have $7,300 left over. And you could play pretty much anybody here, honestly. Maybe we play J.D. McKissick, but that's a 3-3. Typically, I like to stay to the 4-2s or the 5-1s. So if we want to do a 5-1 onslaught, which is either Washington's really kicking Chicago's butt or Chicago's really kicking Washington's butt. There's a couple different ways to do that. We'll just build one of those real quick. So I'm going to put Curtis Samuel. I'm going to put Curtis Samuel in the champion spot to start this time. So we're going to put him there. We're going to play Carson Wentz alongside him. I think in this one, we're going to fade Terry McLaurin. Then we're going to play Brian Robinson alongside too. And since it's going to be since we're turning this one into an onslaught, we're going to play Joey Sly. And I think we're going to play just the Commanders defense altogether. And then we have $12,700 left over. So in this case, you could still play David Montgomery. You could still play Justin Fields. Justin Fields doesn't have to do terrible in this case. He can still run around and get some points too, and then you're not losing anything there. Or you can play David Montgomery. That's just one way to build one of those builds. And then if we want to do the opposite, maybe we want to play the Bears onslaught. Let's just say we're playing David Montgomery in that champion spot. We're going to play Justin Fields alongside him too. Maybe we're saying Mooney still has a good game, or we just go down to kicker and defense, kind of like I did already. And then we're going to build from there. So I think we'll do the kicker and defense. Helps if you put the Bears defense in though. And then we got Santos and get that Commanders defense out of here. So let's see here. We're going to put Mooney in just for this example, at least. So in this case, we got David Montgomery having the best game out of anybody. Justin Fields is still doing all right. He's throwing the ball to Darnell Mooney quite a bit. Bears defense is doing pretty well. And then we got the Bears kicker as well. And then we have $8,400. And it's really easy just to put Curtis Samuel in there because he's $8,200. We know he's going to get targets. He's going to be pretty safe play overall. And even if he doesn't score a touchdown, he's still getting a decent amount of points for our lineup overall. That's a couple different ways to do it. Don't know if anybody has any questions at this point in time, but if you do, feel free to leave them down in the comments and we'll get back to you as quickly as possible. Let's see here. Now, if I was building a cash lineup tonight, this would be kind of interesting because I'm trying to think through this. And obviously, we know Montgomery and Fields are projected to be the highest rostered in the champion spot. So when you're playing cash, do you want to do that? Maybe. I feel like for me personally, I put Curtis Samuel in that champion spot if I'm playing cash tonight. Let's see here real quick. So Curtis Samuel, maybe you play both quarterbacks. I think you're probably going to end up playing a defense and a kicker, maybe both. So let's do the Commanders, and we're just going to do Joey Sly too. And then you have $9,300 left over at that point in time. So with that, God, because you could play Terry McLaurin, but then you're playing 5-1 in cash, which feels a little weird when you think about it. I think maybe there's a way you put David Montgomery in here, and then maybe you just take like Joey Sly away or take the Commanders defense away, one of the two. I think Joey Sly is the easiest one to do though, because if you keep the Commanders defense, then you could still play John Bates. Let's see, where's Bates at? There he is. So that's one that you could try to play in cash. You got Curtis Samuel with Carson Wentz. You got Justin Fields. So you still have what's expected to be like the three highest roster players tonight in Carson Wentz, Justin Fields, and David Montgomery. Curtis Samuel is going to be pretty popular too. You were putting him in a champion spot. You got the Commanders defense, which they can still do all right if Justin Fields and David Montgomery still have touches and whatnot. And then John Bates is just kind of last filler in there for cash if you want to play something like that in cash. Typically, I don't play a lot of cash in single games though. Let's see what we got here. So we got Richard in his thoughts on Bates as a flex for lineup. Yeah, he's very much in play tonight at that $3,000 price range. I know that him and Turner both had around 50% of snaps last week. I will pull that up real quick while I'm talking though. For those of you that don't already know, I do a lot of snap count spreadsheet work, and I have that all in one big spreadsheet so you can see for every individual team. If you guys are interested in that, check that out on my Patreon over at Coach Craig or over at patreon.com/Coach Craig Sports. Small monthly donation, but these sheets actually take a lot of time to put together, and that's the only reason that there is a small donation for it. But let's see where I was at here. So Washington, we are going to pull for. So last week we saw John Bates get 59% of snaps. Cole Turner was at 51%, and Armani Rogers was at 8%. So Rogers is kind of like sneaky athletic tight end. He's a converted quarterback from college. He played his ball at Ohio. But I think if you're playing a tight end tonight, it's either John Bates or Cole Turner. Cole Turner didn't really do anything last week, but $200 dart throw, if you want to go there, you can definitely do it. And like I mentioned, you don't really have to save too much salary overall. What's JC saying? We got snow here in Minnesota today. It's definitely cold tonight in the Midwest. Yes, sir. It is very cold. I'm trying to remember. I think it's 41 degrees here right now. And Chicago is showing about 46 degrees, maybe some wind and all that too. So just get creative tonight when you're building your lineups. You're going to build a couple different narratives. Like I mentioned, maybe you build that narrative where the weather is not that great and the defenses are pretty good and you're playing them and the running backs and some guys that are involved in the short passing game, especially for the Washington side where we got Curtis Samuel and JD McKissick, those guys that don't have that large depth or the large average depth of target. They're getting closer to the line. Maybe on the Bears side, I guess you would call that like David Montgomery and maybe Cole Kmet. So you could definitely build a couple different builds with that. Let's see if we can do something with that real quick. Kmet might be another interesting guy to put in that captain spot too. Just because like Washington's not that great against tight ends. If you're playing him, you're probably playing Justin Fields too. Maybe you still play maybe you still play David Montgomery. Then you could play the Bears kicker, the Bears defense. I just like thinking about it this way when I'm going through. That I want to get to 4-2 stacks or 4-2. So 4 guys from the Bears in this case and 2 guys from Washington. So that's just the way that I try to approach it most times. I'm trying to get to 4-2 or 5-1 because statistically 3-3s usually don't work out the best. They'll win every once in a while, but more times than not, they're not going to win overall. So that's just kind of logic behind that. We got $17,400 remaining. And then at that point, if you play Carson Wentz, then you got $6,800. You could play a JD McKissick still once again if you want to go that direction. Or if you want to get real creative, you could play just a couple different ways too. I think Emmett's almost a sneaky captain play tonight because he was only projected for about 2%. Overall, the Bears were actually projected for 54% of the captain ownership tonight, mainly because 37% of that is going towards David Montgomery and Justin Fields. And all these percentages were just projection, or their projected ownerships based on runthesims.com. They are not an official sponsor of my channel, of this stream, or anything else like that, but I do use them quite a bit. So they are usually pretty good, but obviously the ownership is going to vary contest to contest as well. So if you're playing in a single entry contest, it's going to be more aggregated to those top guys. But if you're playing in a contest that has 20 max, 150 max, it's going to be more spread out ownership overall to captains because people are trying to get exposure to lots of different lineups and lots of different captain plays because they're trying to get that lineup that comes in first place. And oddly enough, last week there was somebody that took home the millionaire contest as a solo. Like nobody else tied him, which is very hard to do on single game slates typically. But that's kind of what I got right now. If you guys have any questions at all, feel free to drop them in the comments. Going to be around here for a couple more minutes. Otherwise, like in between the time between when the stream ends and 7:15, the time of the game kicks off, if you have any questions in between there, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter as well at Coach Craig Sport. So let's see, we got Parker coming in here. First time tuning in, definitely be back. So Parker, I do appreciate you checking out the stream. I do this 6:30 Central Time, 7:30 Eastern Time. It's for the Monday night and Thursday night games. So just breaking down the single game slate. I will have my DFS core picks for the main slate out at some point tomorrow as well. And then obviously, like I mentioned, the patreon.com/Coach Craig Sports. There's the regular one where I have this snap count spreadsheet and some matchup stuff as well as my weekly rankings for fantasy football, but you can kind of roll those over to DFS too in terms. And then there's a slightly upgraded package where it has my DFS player pool for the week as well. So definitely check that out if that's something you're interested in. And you can also check out my DFS cheat sheets for both DraftKings and FanDuel over at WeBetATS.com. Those come out typically Friday or Saturday as well. Just kind of break down high price guys I like for each position, kind of middle of the road price guys I like at each position, and then kind of lower price guys as well. Let's see. Benjamin's up in here. Do you do basketball? Yes, I do. Basketball. I do daily DFS core play picks for both DraftKings and FanDuel. So that'll get rolling. I believe next Wednesday is the first official main slate. I believe there's a game or two maybe on Tuesday. I think it's just one game though. But next Wednesday, that should be get rolling as well. Some of you guys may have joined me a little bit for baseball this last year. Similar type of format for that, except for baseball, I only do FanDuel just because it's just my preferred one as well. Yeah, so I definitely appreciate you being here, Benjamin. And once again, at this point in time, Monday and Thursday, around this time is when I do the live stream for the single game slates. And then obviously it'll be Friday or Saturday is when my core pick video comes out for the main slate as well for both DraftKings and FanDuel, where I just break down one player per position I like. Cheat sheets come out on WeBetATS. And then obviously once we get rolling with the NBA DFS, we'll be having those videos come out on the daily. So who do I like from the Sixers and Philly? Well, it's going to depend slate to slate too as well, especially with NBA. A lot of stuff comes down to pricing and player projections for that specific day, especially when you're trying to factor out how many minutes guys are going to play on each individual game. And that's part of NBA is kind of fun in that regard, just because you're always looking for a value and everything else like that too. But a lot of that still applies to football too, but it's just a little bit different in a way. There's a lot of different ways to get a little bit more different in NFL as opposed to NBA, where there's three good cheap value plays on the slate and everybody just plays them. But and there's a lot greater chance of those guys paying off in NBA versus NFL, where a guy could go out there. We could use Diami Brown as an example here. He's filling in for Jahan Dotson. We'll just pretend he doesn't have his injury. But last week he went out and did a whole bunch. But there's a chance that he can go out, play 80% of snaps this week, see 2 targets, and just not be very good. That's just how football works. And if you're not scoring touchdowns, you're not getting yards, you're not getting catches, you're not producing, and you're not getting points, it's a lot harder to do that in football. And that same type of theory relates to baseball too, because a guy could come in, be a super cheap play, have very good history versus a pitcher, and then just go for 4 on that day too. So let's see. Parker was asking, do I do prize picks? So I play prize picks. I've shared some of mine in one of the Discord chats that JC Money Design and I have together. If you're interested in getting that into that, definitely be sure to leave a comment and we can get you in there as well. But not too much tonight in terms of prize picks, honestly. When I was looking at it, lines are a little bit tight. We're not sure what the weather's going to be on this game, but especially when we get around to NBA, I'll be doing a lot more prize picks, and maybe I'll make some videos for prize picks then as well. But at this point in time, we're right at about 7:00. So I'm going to try to get out of here. If you guys have any last minute questions, feel free to drop them in the next couple of seconds. If not, reach out to me on Twitter over at Coach Craig Sport. But definitely appreciate everybody that tuned in tonight. Seems like the Thursday one's a little bit more popular, but if you were in here tonight and you can make it on Monday, definitely would appreciate having you once again. But with that being said, that's pretty much all I got. So hopefully you guys do pretty well tonight. Obviously, these Thursday games have been a little bit more random, but some of these games that have been pretty ugly this year have been kind of the ones that I've been doing a little bit better on as well. So definitely just be sure to be creative as you're building your lineups. You're building them out. You're telling that story. You're making a 4-2. You're making a 5-1. If you guys need any more advice just in general, always feel free to reach out to me on Twitter and we can talk a little bit more. But definitely appreciate everybody that did tune in tonight. And hopefully you guys do very well. And hopefully this is a pretty interesting game, because last week's game was about as exciting as watching paint dry. But definitely do appreciate everybody that tuned in. And hopefully you guys can make it back on Monday night as well.